So yeah, thanks for coming on the Humble Pie today, Mike. So Mike is a coach and founder of Advanced Business Abilities, a specialist in performance coaching and self-development. You're originally from the US, but you settled in Australia for a couple decades now, 20 years or so, right?
Yeah, 1997 I came over to Australia. I was meant to be here for 6 months and then go back to the US and finish my degree in biology. And after 6 months, I had a really good time and decided I wanted to stay.
Awesome. And it's very difficult to pick up any trace of any US accent. So whether that's by design or just by virtue of being there for so long, it's happened. So, but you're originally from Massachusetts, aren't you? I think you told me the first time we met.
Yeah, grew up just south of Boston, and it's funny. Boston, if you've been to Boston, the accent there is actually really similar to Australian, and my accent seems it's quite funny. They don't pronounce their R's there either, and they've got a really it's an interesting twang. But my accent changed loads because when I left Boston at 18, I went to uni, and all of a sudden you're with people from all over the country, and then at 21 came to Australia with people from all over the world. I don't know, not many people can copy my accent. I hope it's a little bit unique anyway.
It's very unique. Yeah, it's very unique. It's great. And I suppose it's just as unique as the story that I'd like you to maybe share, if you like, sort of running through your background and how you got to where you are today and what you're doing. Because when we first met, you mentioned that you were in a stable career, you were doing really well, and then something caused you to, or maybe you felt at a certain point that you'd lost your way and something kind of happened to you. And so, I mean, do you want to just give me a run through on that?
Yeah, happy to. When I was 21 and decided I wanted to stay in Sydney, that meant finding a way to earn money quickly. And the way that I was able to take action on that immediately was I applied for this funny ad. It said, apply today, start tomorrow. Marketing company needs enthusiastic young people to deal with customers. And I went, oh, well, I'm enthusiastic and I'm young and I'm desperate for a job. Let's go. And so I got a job and learned how to go door to door doing sales on commission only. And fascinating experience. I learned loads through the practice of that.
It's tough.
There's a system to it, and it takes a degree of toughness. It takes a willingness to be told no, and there's a system to it. And I learned that system, and then 18 months later, I was able to incorporate a company and go and run my own business, building sales teams on behalf of these large corporate clients. And I ran that business for almost 10 years. I think it was about 9 years in the end. And at one point we had 300 sales reps across 3 cities of Australia. I had what was considered by most, a really successful life and a great business. I was always interested in continuing my development. And so I used to read lots of books that, they all said the same thing. They all said, you create your own reality. And that used to really frustrate me because there were points in time that business had a degree of a roller coaster experience to it. And when things were good, you don't really learn a lot. But when things are bad, man, you really start looking at things and going, well, what have I done wrong here? Where have I gone wrong? How have I created this reality for myself? And it frustrated me because I couldn't get the answer to those questions. When I hired coaches, they helped me, but they actually seemed to make my life more difficult and more challenging. They didn't make it easier. They didn't help me with the things that I really wanted help with. And the closer I got to 30, the further away this target of retiring at 30 was. Sorry, I'd gone wrong somewhere. Even though I had what looked like a really spectacular life, I was actually pretty miserable. I was really unhappy, and I actually didn't understand why. It was as if I didn't really know or understand myself. And so that in and of itself was incredibly frustrating. It had been my job for 10 years to teach people how to have a good attitude and how to set goals and stay motivated. And I was seriously struggling with those parts of life, and the inability to, I suppose, understand how to deal with my emotions at that point meant that all areas of life were affected, and so it was nobody on the outside looking in would have necessarily seen it, but the people that were closest to me did. And I even went to the doctor at one point, and I was feeling pretty stressed and unhappy, and I walked out of the doctor and he had prescribed me medication for depression. And that was a real pivotal moment, because I thought to myself, man, there's something wrong. Where have I gone wrong? I've been teaching this for 10 years. How did I get here? I don't understand. Now, I made a very personal choice in that moment. I chose not to take that medication. I wouldn't advise anybody else to do that, but that was my choice. And I can remember sitting on my bedside and looking at the script and thinking to myself, okay, I know I have a problem. I don't really know what the problem is, and I am going to do everything in my power to figure out what that problem is and how to solve it. And that was kind of the moment that was the seed that sparked the time in my life since then. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to a team of people that in a very short space of time were able to help me. They were able to give me tools and help me to totally change the way I was looking at and creating my life. 6 months later, I kind of wondered what happened.
Wow. And that's pretty quick transformation within 6 months. I suppose some people take, their entire lives to try and achieve some kind of transition or, a catharsis or some sort of change from one way of living to another, no matter how much they might yearn for it. But it seems that you were able to reach into yourself and kind of get into that dial inside, and through an effort of the will or something, you made a choice to change or change something.
Well, I'm going to give credit where credit's due here. The people that I met, I now refer to them as my research team. Their average age now is 76. So when I met them, their average age was 60, and they'd spent 40, 50 years of their lives each, looking at this and working in the space. And they had developed and researched, how do you really create permanent change for somebody? And so I don't think that there's necessarily anything special about me. I wasn't able to just magically work it out. It took them guiding me through processes and giving me tools, and then me applying those tools and utilizing them and thinking with that information in order to affect that change. And 6 months isn't a long time. I'm now 16 years down the road, and I'm still working on myself. So it's not as if 6 months and then I was perfect, right?
Yeah.
6 months and then I was really different. But that development has continued, and it's a credit to them and their patience and their ability to bring me through that process and for it to have worked.
Yeah. And is that how you would define what you're aiming to do for your clients with advanced business abilities? I mean, what kinds of people do you help? How do you help them?
Yeah, 100%. So we help business owners and sales professionals predominantly. And it's not that we only help them. That's the people that we can help the most and the fastest. And we help them to identify their own blind spots, weaknesses, and also their strengths. And then when we've established that we know exactly what those are, we'll get them to tell us what they want to change. We will then create a program to support them to achieve that change. And the whole basis of it is really about removing resistance, removing the invisible blocks that get in the way of them achieving what they want to. So that's,
I love that.
Answered that question sufficiently. That's who we help, and a little bit about how, an overview of how.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, absolutely. I watched one of your videos on your site, and something that struck me, well, a few things. So you mentioned that learning to sell is the most important skill that anyone can learn. And I love the definition you used of what selling is, or the sort of the the idea of selling is communication towards action and commitment, and obviously it's so true. So would you say then that given the fact that you focus on salespeople, on that skill as something that is as important as what you've said, do you think that selling is an innate skill? That is something that is in possibly all of us that you can bring to the surface, or is it not innate in all of us and now actually has to be taught by somebody who maybe doesn't naturally feel how to do it for themselves?
I think the answer is actually both of those things. Everyone is selling all of the time. Selling is effective communication towards action and commitment. So when you speak to your wife or your partner about what you would like to do this coming weekend, you are selling. You're selling your idea.
I sure do.
Of what you want to do this coming weekend, right? If you are a nurse in a hospital and you're communicating with a doctor or a patient, you're selling on an idea to take a particular action. So we are all selling all of the time. Anyone who's listening, if they have children, man, kids are really good at selling. They are really good at getting what they want, right? Yeah. They're really good at getting mom and dad to do what they want when they want it. So we all sell, and we all sell all of the time. Now, when it comes to selling a product or selling a widget, sure, there are some people that just have a natural ability to do that. But the best salespeople that I've come across don't necessarily have a natural ability. It's actually something they've really worked at. It's something that they've looked at the process and the principles that are involved in the process of selling, and they use those principles. They ensure that they stay within, I'm going to say, the rules of the game. It is a game. It has rules, and if you break those rules, you're going to decrease your chances of achieving what you want, right? So if the more that you understand the principles, and that definition of selling, it includes some of the principles there. It's effective communication towards action and commitment. So yeah, everyone can learn how to sell. I've had people who, you take them out to do sales on day one, and when it's their turn to kind of go and talk to somebody, they break out in a sweat, they turn red in the face, their mouth goes dry, they can't even say, "G'day, how you going? My name is," right? Those people have often gone on to be some of the best performers over time. If they just stick with it, if they just keep going, if they get beyond their own resistance, there is ability there. It's about removing the resistance that is within yourself on the subject of selling and communication. And then learning to communicate in a way that does not activate resistance within the person that you're talking to. Right.
That makes sense. Yeah. In order to have a transaction of some kind, and not a transaction in a financial sense, but in an energetic sense, I suppose, something that is being traded between people. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that is being, there is an exchange that occurs, right? Sales is all about an exchange. An exchange doesn't always involve money. In a marriage, exchange occurs on the subject of love and support. Exchange happens on a variety of levels in every relationship we have. So it's about making sure that you're communicating effectively and that you are being in exchange.
Yeah. I'm interested to explore a bit more the concept about resistance, or as it says in your mighty banner behind you, the concept of unblocking, or sort of getting out of your own way. I'm curious. Maybe you can unpack that a little bit more, and how does it work? How do you help people to sort of unblock those crucial areas for them to be able to perform, to be able to live their lives they want to?
The resistance is a word that has a few different definitions that apply. So resistance is that one of the definitions is on an emotional level. So we feel resistance. And the other definition is there is an electrical definition for the word resistance. And both of those definitions applied how I use it. Your body operates on an electrical system, and your emotions are a way that your body communicates to you about how things are traveling, right? If we are unwilling to experience something, then we both create and also activate resistance on that subject. And it is the resistance that we have that restricts us from being able to do anything at all. Anything that you'd like to create or achieve, anything you'd like to act on, any goal that you would like to make sure actually manifests, if you're not able to do it reasonably effortlessly, the reason that you can't is going to be some type of resistance, or resistance on a particular subject. So I'll give you a really simple example of resistance if you're willing to engage with me.
Please.
Okay, so I'm going to say something to you and we're just going to observe what happens. So, Alex, did you know the best place to view the crepuscule is on the back of a boat with a cold beer in hand?
I don't know what a crepuscule is. Is that...
Well done. Excellent. Yep. A lot of people wouldn't even actually state that. So when I said the crepuscule, what happened? What was your experience?
For me, I wanted to kind of see where the rest of the sentence or rest of the question went before I went back to that word and thought, okay, what is that? I thought maybe I could unlock more context in the rest of the question, but I couldn't.
Yeah, the mind immediately goes to attempt to work out the definition through context, right? And generally, most people don't like to feel stupid or like they don't understand. So we're searching. There was a feeling that occurred when that word was spoken, right? And that feeling it's really subtle, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's a feeling that we're unwilling to experience. We don't like it. We generally push against it or do our best to avoid it. Now,
definitely,
when I tell you that the word crepuscule is defined as horizon at dusk, which is essentially sunset.
What a great word for such a beautiful concept.
And now when I say, Alex, did you know the best place to view the crepuscule is on the back of a boat with a cold beer in hand?
Oh, can't agree more.
So now can you notice the absence of that feeling?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
So that feeling is what I'm talking about when I talk about resistance.
Complete understanding. Yeah. Complete sort of unlocking. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great example. Yeah.
And that's just a particular type of resistance. That resistance occurs. How often do you get that subtle feeling in your life? It happens regularly.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, and it's incredibly subtle. Another example of resistance is, let's say that when you were 18, what was your least favorite class at school?
Probably a second language growing up in South Africa.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, Afrikaans probably. Yeah,
sure.
Even though I like it now.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I'm going to take a little bit of creative liberty to sort of explain this other aspect of resistance. Let's say when you were 18, you absolutely had enough. You couldn't stand studying Afrikaans, and in fact, you were certain that Afrikaans had it out for you. You wanted nothing to do with the class anymore.
Yeah, especially the teacher. Yeah.
Sure. Well, that may have started when you were 12. So when you were 12, let's say it's your first day back to school after summer holidays, and you've just had the best summer holidays of your entire life. And at 12 years old, you're sitting in, level 1 Afrikaans class, and you're daydreaming out the window. The teacher's up the front of the room teaching the lesson, and you're gone. All you can think about is how much you would rather be doing whatever you did over summer holidays.
Yeah.
And
looking at a crepuscule.
Yeah. And a split second later, you're startled by the silence of the room, and it brings you right back into the room. And then a split second after that, there's a rap on your desk, and you look up and there's the teacher staring at you. Right, Alex, what's the answer? Well, in that moment, how do you feel?
Yeah. Shocked, sort of, under attack.
Yeah. Maybe a bit embarrassed because all your classmates are looking at you. You might feel a little bit stupid because you didn't even hear the question, never mind know the answer. So you've now got a survival moment. You've got what we could call a trauma, something that we're unwilling to experience. And so you're going to create a way of surviving it. You might go to humor, see if you can deflect and get all your mates to laugh so that the pressure's not on you anymore.
Yeah, I definitely did that.
Sure. Other people wouldn't go to humor. They would go to freeze and just apologize. And I'm sorry, teacher, I didn't hear the question. Could you please repeat the question? I'm so embarrassed. You'll create a survival mechanism. And it'll work because you will survive the moment. But what's going to happen is now you're going to leave class with a memory that's been created that has resistance attached to it. So that resistance, your mind's kind of like a computer. So it's got a processor and a hard drive and files, which are the memories. And when we have these moments where resistance is activated and created, the resistance is like a virus that attaches itself to the file. Now, initially, it'll only affect that one file, but it'll spread sooner or later. It'll affect other files, then it can affect the whole operating system. And so over the next 3, 4, 5 years, you'll create with that resistance. So you'll create more moments attached to the subject of the class of Afrikaans, and it'll compound on itself. So each time it gets a little bit more severe. The first time you walk out of class thinking, no, I don't much like this teacher. I wish I was back on summer holidays. The 5th or 6th time you walk out going, bloody Afrikaans class isn't much fun. The 20th time you walk out and you're absolutely certain that Afrikaans class has it out for you and you want nothing to do with it anymore.
The hole gets deeper.
Yeah. It's how you can have people that say things that just sound totally crazy, but it's absolutely true to them. Like when somebody says something like, oh, watch out, Alex, just around the corner, there's a black dog. All black dogs are dangerous. Just be careful when you go around the corner. To some people, that sounds totally insane, but to other people, it's absolutely the truth. And because they have that resistance, they're actually still creating with it. So they'll behave, or they'll create a situation where the dog will behave in a way that demonstrates to them that they're right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Creating your own reality.
Yeah.
I wonder, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
No, mate, it's exactly right. It's, we do create our own reality, and we do that mostly through our thoughts and ideas and belief systems. Belief systems are a funny one because belief systems are things that we've thought about and considered, and we've decided that we believe in them. But there's also a whole series and huge number of belief systems that we haven't considered or thought about.
Right.
We don't have a word to describe those, but they exist. They're things that we hold to be true, even though we've got no evidence at all that they're actually true.
So when you, it's fascinating what you're saying, and at the same time, quite obvious in a way because it's all there. We're all made up of the same basic equipment, and getting somebody to really encourage you to interrogate these sorts of things, these sorts of questions, will no doubt bring up, I'd imagine, some of these traumas, some of these things that offer resistance. But I'd assume that, going through that and moving through that and doing the work allows you to probably be a lot more free, or, have a lot more vision on something than before, because you weren't aware that there was resistance that you were encountering, or maybe you didn't give it that particular word. So I'm interested in how how that translates into the kind of service that you provide, or what you do for your clients. But also, would you say that the particular brand of what you do can fall under the kind of umbrella of coaching? Because coaching seems to be a godsend for some and a really dirty word for others. Do you feel what you do is coaching?
Yes, I've called myself a coach for 15, 16 years now. The problem is that coaching is a word that's used by lots and lots of people right now. Anyone can go and do a weekend course and get a certificate that says they're a life coach. Anyone can go and spend $50,000 or $100,000 and get given a system to follow to be a business coach. Good coaching is a skill that is developed and trained into you over time. It's not something that you go and do a weekend course and all of a sudden you're going to be excellent at it. The fundamental thing about good coaching, from my perspective, and I hope this helps even just one person who listens to this or watches this, good coaching does not involve telling someone what to do. Good coaching is about asking questions. It's not about giving instruction. That's not coaching. That's more mentoring or training, but it's not coaching. So yeah, I do call myself a coach, although I'm doing my best to be away from that word to some degree, because it is very watered down. I even as simple as just talk about myself as a support. We run guided self-mentoring programs for our clients. And we ask them to give us permission to put their attention on where the resistance is.
Right.
And then support them to inspect it and deal with it and remove it. And it's not that complex. It's actually fairly simple once you can see how to do it. And it's effective. That's the most important part. We can make it measurable.
I like how you use the second definition, or almost the kind of the electric circuit kind of definition of resistance, because it's a physical system, and if you can kind of hack it or sort of learn how to manipulate it in a certain way, then there's a trick to getting what you need from it. It's not necessarily something that is deeply complex, and almost like psychology, for example, which really has layers that just go on forever. Not that doesn't have any value, of course, but the particular way in of first starting at the point of resistance, unblock that, and then move ahead. I think that's quite refreshingly simple, and probably something that anyone should be practicing. And I suppose practice is the key, isn't it? Something that becomes a continuous revising and relearning of what you're experiencing based on what you're doing.
Yeah, funny that you said those words. I tend to actually talk about it as unlearning rather than relearning. It's unlearning.
Right.
The removal of the things that you have learned that don't actually support you any longer. It's about freeing you up from that resistance so that you're more able.
I love that. Maybe a separate sort of question I had while I was thinking about this yesterday, because we can almost go macro for a second. To what extent do you feel that the world of business, typically the kinds of clients that you work with, the types of organizations that you work with, that world, which I'm sure you know what I mean by that particular world, where it's high pressure, kind of high stakes constantly, and then this other world, which it seems that you're trying to borrow some lessons from in order to, insert some energy into this business world, the kind of the world of spirituality, if you like, or certain practices that come from that particular world. To what extent do you think these two worlds, if you like, are compatible? Is there a way to sort of create a bridge between the two, or is it about really just managing them separately?
No, they're 100% compatible. And in fact, I don't think it works to have them as separate worlds. I actually think that that's been a big problem. I'll also say that idea or that concept is not necessarily new. Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, and in it he very much talked about, he didn't necessarily use the words spirituality, but if you read through what he wrote about, it was there. He wrote another book called Outwitting the Devil, which has only been published recently. And in that, it goes much more into the depths of spirituality that all of the most successful people were aware of. They had an understanding of the invisible. So I think that it's actually a really important thing, but only if it's practical. It's about having a practical approach to spirituality. And what I mean by that is if you do something to develop yourself as a spiritual being, the only way to determine whether or not it actually really had any worth or impact is, does it change what you are able to produce in real life? If it doesn't, then I don't know that it's doing much.
Yeah, in name only.
Yeah, it could be a great concept. It could feel nice, but hold on, this is about getting practical results. If we go with the idea that you're a spiritual being, then that means you've got all of the abilities that any spiritual being has available to you. So if you start to look at, well, what are the abilities of a being? Well, we know that there are some beings that run businesses and companies that employ 1,000 staff. We know that some beings have created wealth of, billions and billions of dollars. Well, that tells me that anybody can do that. It's about doing the work to free yourself from the restrictions and resistances, etc., that stop you from being able to achieve that.
I'm interested in your perspective specifically on something maybe hasn't necessarily come up much in the conversation, but at the moment I'm reading a really interesting book about sort of trying to future-proof the human worker and the human executive in the business world for the future of artificial intelligence and automation, and the kind of future that sees thousands of the jobs and different roles that at the moment is obviously filled by a human, but faces some kind of existential threat to be automated, or at least partially automated by machines, or some kind of algorithm that poses a threat to that. Now, what's interesting is how we often kind of internalize the concept of work as part of who we are and our identity. And I suppose there's many good reasons why that happens, and you could even argue that there are many good benefits from doing that. But I'm interested in your take on what kind of existential thinking you might have around AI automation, and how humans can kind of still fill a kind of a role for themselves that matter in that world, but also be how that can still be related to the world that you've just that we've just been talking about, the kind of the business and spirituality, is that still compatible with a future that looks quite uncertain and possibly very automated?
Yeah, awesome question. The book you're reading, it wouldn't happen to be called Humans Are Underrated, is it? By Jeff?
No, it's called... No, although that sounds like it needs to be next to my Kindle. But this one's called Future Proof by I forget the guy's name, but he's a New York Times writer. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Humans Are Underrated is a very similarly, it sounds like it would be a very similarly structured book.
Cool.
And yeah, the thing that Jeff Colvin looked at in that book is exactly this. The first 80 pages of the book is all about the changes that are happening right now in AI, robotics, and automation that are going to change what humans are doing within the next 5 to 10 years. They already are changing. And he then went on to examine, if that's the case, then what is it that's going to make a human valuable? And, for me, I totally agree with what he spoke about. And what he spoke about was that humans will be valuable based on their connection and interpersonal skills, their communication skills, their leadership, empathy, their ability to effectively communicate towards action and commitment. Because we don't trust robots. We don't trust automation. We want messages to still be delivered by a person that we feel connected to, who can empathize with us and help us understand. So those two things go hand in hand. The thing that tends to get in the way of really effective communication skills is resistance. It's the unwillingness to experience having the difficult conversation and doing it anyways, but doing it in a neutral, natural tone that will not activate the resistance that exists in the person that you're talking to or having that difficult conversation with.
Right.
So they go hand in hand. If you want to get better at dealing with people, the way to do that is, number one, by doing the work on yourself. And then number two, by practicing those skills. Communication as an example, those interpersonal connection skills, empathy, etc. The problem with them is that they have a serious false economy. We do them every day. The false economy that gets created is our understanding of whether or not we're good at them.
Right.
Most of us think we're better at them than what we really are. Myself included. I 16 years ago, if you had asked me, was I good at communication, I would have sworn up one side of you, down the other, that I was excellent at it. I run a morning meeting every day for 300 people. I speak on stage in front of 3,000 people regularly. I'm very good at it. It wasn't until that I actually started to look at what good communication really was. When I looked at that, I went, oh, okay, hold on. I've actually got some serious gaps in my skill set.
So it sounds like what you're saying is very similar to what the author of the book I mentioned was also saying, is that in a future where it looks like, there's going to be more and more of a presence of machines and robots and machine learning and so on, we've got to be in a position where we're able to embrace our humanity even more, rather than trying to resist it and kind of almost compete with machines by being more like machines. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because it seems like a lot of people, even myself, considering, looking at studying coding and, understanding more about certain technical aspects and trying to compete with the machine. Whereas, maybe the future belongs to communicators and artists and the kinds of things that, at least for now, are almost impossible for a machine to try and replicate or to compete against a human. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Those skills. Sales is the highest paid profession on the planet.
It is. That's not a, that's not arguable. And it will be, because when you develop those skills, when you develop the ability to assist someone to make a commitment to take an action that's aligned with what they want and is going to solve problems that they want solved, people hate making decisions.
Yeah.
And people hate being sold to. But it's really
it's a contradiction, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it gets even more interesting because everybody loves to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you develop the skill of selling so that they're not being sold to? You're giving them opportunities to buy what they want. It's a very subtle difference, but there is a significant distinction to have there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm interested then in or just while we're keeping in, under the topic of the future, what are you excited about? Is there anything looking ahead in the next 10, 20 years, even if it's personal or something that, might be happening in the world, maybe an awakening, maybe something in your business, whatever it might be? What gets you up in the morning? Why? What makes you happy to live another day?
Man, that's a great question. The best answer I can give you to that question is that I've worked at what I'm doing now for almost 16 years. And I'm still just as enthusiastic and excited about it now as I was 16 years ago. And I made a huge number of decisions 16 years ago about my life and what I wanted it to be and what I wanted to be able to do, and how I wanted to be able to help people. And helping people therefore also creates rewards. So I've been really fortunate to learn an enormous amount in the last 16 years, specifically about this. So I still love every day getting up knowing that I'm going to talk to somebody today and I'm going to have an opportunity to help them change their life. And the more that I do that, the more that I'm also able to realize, manifest, if we want to say, the life that I decided I wanted to have 16 years ago. So, I'm really lucky. I've worked really hard on my marriage, and I've got a marriage that really works because of it. And my wife and I love to travel, and we're now in a position once COVID has done its dash, hopefully it will. We're in a position where we can go and do a lot of the things that we want to do. So what am I? I'm excited to help people to develop the skills that Humans Are Underrated talks about, and this book that you're reading probably sounds like it talks about them as well.
Yeah, to some degree. And what's also interesting, at least for the way I perceive it, my generation, which is what people now see as the millennial generation, sort of moving into the 30s and becoming involved in leadership positions in companies, starting their own businesses, founding their own startups. It's all very exciting, and I think that there's a lot of potential there that we'll still see over the next decade or so. But specifically with the millennial generation, I find that there seems to be almost like a kind of a real willingness and enthusiasm and passion and drive to get to where they want to go, and live the kind of life, whether it's influenced by hustle culture, I put in 120 hours this week, how many did you put in, that kind of thing, and want to embody that and believe that and do it that way. But somehow it seems that there's an unwillingness in a way to commit to the real length of the journey, however it might pan out. I think a lot of the time people, or at least in my generation, want a certain they want certain sureties, want certain certainties that it's going to be that way, that, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to do this, by the time I'm 45, and so where I'm going with this is I wonder if you have any advice for business owners, young founders, people who are maybe in a position where you found yourself, 15, 16 years ago, wanting to try and carve out a path for themselves and maybe coming up against some resistance, or perhaps uncertain about what option to take, or perhaps not feeling confident about the path ahead of them.
Yeah, I think I've actually looked for a long time at, that age, that 28, 29, 30, 31. That's a great age, because, a lot of people by that age, they've had a go at a bunch of things. They've failed enough times to know that, hold on, this isn't maybe as easy as I thought it was going to be. They're old enough that there's a degree of arrogance that young people have. It's wonderful when we're 21 and 22. We know it all. It's very true for me that the older I got, the smarter my father and my grandfather became. They were really intelligent. And so at that age, that 28, 29, 30 years old, the one thing I would say more than anything is go and get help. Call us. We provide free 1-hour discovery sessions to just talk with people and listen and understand them. You won't be able to achieve anything on your own. That statement's true in business. It's true in sport. It's true in a marriage. It takes a team. It takes support. It takes guidance. So make sure you get those. I think it's important to. I have chosen specifically to have a research team that is, average age of 76 right now. I spend time with them every week. The people who are 60, 70, 80, 90 years old right now, they have been through a life. They have the scars and the bruises and the broken bones that they've healed from. And the world's not that different today to what it was back then. Every generation, it's talked about how they're just so different. There are differences. There are differences in environment. There are differences in thinking. But the world's not really that different. So go and spend time with people who have had the experience and listen to what they say. You'll learn a lot.
Listen more than talk, or at least try and listen as much as possible. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
The more questions that you can ask, and this is a principle. This principle applies to sales. It applies to building quality relationships. The more questions you ask, as long as you have a real genuine intention to understand the other person's reality on the subject, that's the most powerful thing you can do for yourself and for them.
Asking questions.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautifully put. Mike, thank you so much for jumping on the Humble Pie with me today. It's been a really, really interesting conversation. I think I learned a lot. I think I put into practice what you just said, hopefully. I feel smarter for just listening to you. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully sometime you can come back again and we can have another chinwag.
Mate, I would love to. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and it's been fantastic to be on, and I hope that it provides value for your listeners. And mate, thanks for having me. It's been great.